Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good, thank you. You?
I'm good. I'm good.
Thank you for giving me your time today. I really appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to do it.
Thank you. I mean, I was having a look. Basically, we used to talk about sports, and then everything got cancelled, so we wound up going back through all of our kind of favorite films, and we've just got on to doing action films. So, just kind of having a look at your page. I mean, you work as a stunt coordinator, performer, fight choreographer, and I'm sure there's more too. So, I thought a good place to start would be how do you kind of wind up with that job? Because it's not something you probably see in your local paper and then go down to the film set.
Sure. So I went to college for theater directing, actually, and so I was directing theater. And while I was in school, I got into swords, and so sword fighting, and I was doing a bunch of theater fight choreography, um, and uh, and then I did a live show for a couple of summers where I ran around and just sword fought all summer, and kind of fell in love with it. And then I graduated college, and then it was sort of it was a bit of kind of kismet of I choreographed one of my professor's shows, and she said, "Oh, I got a guy you should meet." And 2 weeks later, I was on set and I had my first part, and got my SAG card, and it just kind of and I connected with a this stunt coordinator named Blaze Corrigan, and he really sort of took me under his wing, and we hit it off really well, and it kind of snowballed for me, and my life took a pretty big left turn. So it was kind of a mix of a lot of things that led me to the moment, and then a bit of sort of luck and kismet that made my life take a left turn.
I wondered how it works. Do you kind of see the script and you kind of got this is where this scene's going to be, and then you get to work, or do you get given like set pieces like we need this to happen, and you kind of have the freedom to choreograph it within there, or how does that process kind of work?
So it's there's really a really wide variety depending on the director predominantly. Sometimes the production in large, but usually the director, in terms of maybe in terms of how specific the script is. Some scripts are super specific. Some are more just like, and they fight, and you gotta kind of fill it in. But yeah, it really depends on director and what they come into, and some of them are kind of general and say, look, I think it starts here, and this some stuff happens, and then I need it to end over here with this guy on top punching him, whatever. And then I sort of fill in everything in between, and then in a rehearsal process, they'll say, hey, well, what about this or this or this, and they'll kind of help shape it. So there's sort of everything from that to someone like Craig, who he was extremely specific from our very first meeting. He knew what he wanted. He had, and he was great. He was really open to ideas. So when I said, okay, well, you asked for this, but I think if I give you this, it's going to be more of what you're looking for. He was really open to all that, but he was really super specific with his action in a way that that I think is actually not super normal, for a director. It was a strong vision from the beginning.
On your like IMDb page, they have your kind of first kind of like credited role in this is like 2006, and then 2008 is when it seems to you're doing more films than most people see in a year. You're recording all that many. So was there kind of one film that kind of got the ball rolling and spiraling there? Because it seems that you must work harder than just about anyone I know.
So I was really fortunate pretty early on, just like 6 months after I got into the business. I got cast in I'm Legend, um, and that was a pretty big job for me. That was the job that sort of let me quit my day job and say, okay, this is the thing that I'm gonna do. And so that was definitely my first big step in that direction. And really, it was I didn't even I was on the show for like 17 weeks, and then I didn't even quit my job yet. Like I was still had my waiting tables job, because I figured once that was over, I was going to go back to that. And then it just continued to snowball and continued to go from there. So I was really fortunate that my performing career sort of took off relatively quickly and got, it's a weird career. It took it. You never know where the next phone call is coming from. It took a couple years to feel confident that I don't know where the call's coming from. I just know it's coming at some point, and so that was sort of early on the big, sort of step from my performer career. And then the coordinating career has been, it's just built over 15 years. I started, I went to NYU, New York University, and after I graduated and started doing stunts, I went back and started coordinating NYU films and Columbia University films. So I was doing all these little short films for $0, and little back alleys of Brooklyn and whatever. It was so I did a ton of that, and it's just over the years it just slowly step by step built to the place where where I think last year and the year before I was doing predominantly coordinating and performing when I could and when I had the time, but that was definitely a slow build over the years.
Because on I Am Legend, they have you down as like an acting role on this. So were you doing the coordinating as well, or did it?
No, I was just. I mean, I was brand new at the time, so They cast a group of us as the creature company, they called us.
Yeah.
And there was like 35 of us that were. It was like half stunt people, half dancers. And we were sort of the creature company. So I was just a performer on that one. And I really, like I said, I performed predominantly for 10 years, because that's what you do, is you build your experience as a performer. And I early on I started coordinating, but I started coordinating on student films because it was a place for me to learn and try, and and as long as I kept everybody safe, if something didn't work, I learned from it. If something worked great, I learned from it. So that was the process, and then those projects just kind of got bigger and bigger over the years.
I thought with doing the stunt work, I wonder what's kind of an average day at the office in terms of this, because if you kind of tell that to most people, they think you're turning up at 9 a.m. and you're jumping off a building kind of thing. So, like, how much of it is what we see in the film and how much of it is kind of the things we don't see?
Yeah, well, I mean, the short answer is there's no such thing as a typical day, which honestly is the reason I gravitated towards the career and kind of fell in love with it, was that there's no 2 days are the same ever, even on the same movie. They're rarely the same, because it's always something new. It's always a different scene. It's always a different location. It's it's all that sort of stuff. So that's the general gist. But other than that, it really depends on sort of what you're doing on any given day. There are a lot of days where you sit around for 11 and a half hours, and then for 30 minutes you get shot and fall down, and that's a pretty typical day, where you're either in a little trailer or you're sitting in a folding chair somewhere with the other stunt people, and you just hang out and talk for 11 hours, and then they go, okay, now go, and you gotta run and get shot and you're done, and there are days where I show up and I get there, and especially TV these days is a bit more efficient. So you could show up and get dressed and get makeup and hair, and then, you're done in 3 hours and you go home, and it's kind of everything in between. And then there are days like I just did a day yesterday where we were choreographing a sword fight for this TV show. And, we got there and we worked straight through, and it was just sword fighting for 8 hours basically, and working stuff out and trying stuff, and then you show the director and he gives feedback, and so then you change things, and then the actors come in the afternoon and you teach them and all that sort of stuff, and it was just sort of 8 straight hours of creativity and physicality and all that sort of stuff. So it's that sort of broad of a range of days with very little and days with that are just sort of jam-packed.
Yeah, because I saw on your website there's a picture. I assume it's you set on fire. So I was thinking,
Yeah.
like, do you turn up when you get a piece of paper and it's, well, this is what you're doing today, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, fire's really fun. I really enjoy fire. I personally have been on fire once, but then as a coordinator, actually, I've coordinated, I think it's seven burns at this point. People keep setting people on fire for some reason, but that's really fun because it's kind of a mix of very technical work and you get guys that are really good at it. I have guys that set up the burns for me, and so you get those guys that are really good at that process. As a performer, it's a very sort of physically intense process, the actual setup of it. And then when it works, it's spectacular and it's really, really cool, and everybody's excited about it. It's always a big day on set, which is kind of cool too. There are days where people get shot and fall down, or just somebody slaps somebody, and those are just normal days. But whenever something like fire comes along, everybody's real excited about it.
have you had anything yet where you've seen it on paper and you've been a bit set back, like maybe it's the first time you've done something, or just something that's more over the top than usual?
Yeah, I mean, there's a first time for everything, and there's lots of weird stuff out there. So there's plenty of stuff that you read and go like, okay, like let's hear what their idea is, and even with that stuff, sometimes they'll have an idea and know how they're planning on doing it, and sometimes they have no idea, and they may come to the stunt department or come to me and think that we're kind of magic workers, which sometimes we can be. Sometimes we could make amazing things happen, but other times it becomes a larger conversation of like, okay, well, what is this? Is this stunts? Is this special effects? Is this VFX? Is this a combination of all three of this? How do we make this really weird thing happen? And again, sort of Craig's an interesting example of, he had a very clear vision of all these practical effects up front. So he would write something of, a face gets scraped along the ground.
Yeah.
And we, and we would have a conversation. He said, and I'd say, okay, so what is that? What's the idea there? And he said, oh, this is what we're doing. I have the special effects guy and we're going to do this and all that sort of stuff. So, there's stuff like that. And then there's other stuff like the car smash, where Vince beats up the car at the beginning. That was a lot more challenging because it was an idea, but the practical side of it was something very kind of new, and the way Craig wanted to shoot it was tricky, and so there was just more questions, and there was more things that had to be figured out, and so we had to do special effects tasks, and I had to bring my stunt guy to the special effects place to hit it to make sure Vince wasn't going to break his hand when he hit it, like just stuff like that you then go like, okay, well, this is weird, and I don't know anybody that's done this exact thing.
Yeah.
How do we make it safe and look good?
I've always thought it was admirable, particularly with the stunt performing, because if I'd set myself on fire in place with someone else, I'd put my name on a billboard like, this is the guy that set himself on fire for this film. You kind of do it and then go away, and that's kind of your bit done, and you get your name in the credits there. So to kind of turn up and do that with was not quite the fanfare, I always thought is a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, there's a kind of a interesting and fun part to the anonymity of it, of like, people know we exist, and obviously it's, they when they're watching an action movie, they know there's stunts somewhere, but I don't, unless you sort of really study it, I don't think you have any clear concept of the level of sort of detail to which we can be involved in certain things like that. And so but that part of it, I think, can be kind of fun. You have to go into it with that mindset, and I think being being okay with that, and maybe enjoying that a little bit, because if you go into it looking to be famous or looking to get a level of recognition, you're going to get squeezed out of the industry pretty quick, because there's just not a lot of room for that in the stunt department, because the stunt department in general has, a bit more of this idea of like, do your job. You just do your job and you do it well, and then you'll get another job, and then you get another job. But like that's the, you want to do good work, and when people like the movie, that's your attaboy kind of thing.
Yeah, because as a like fight choreographer, when you go into a film like Brawl in Cell Block 99 and you see the reviews and it's like limb bending, wince inducing, all this kind of thing, that must be almost like the dream situation for you, because you can really push everything about as far as you can see it go in film. So as soon as you got the concept or the script, did you know kind of this is going to be perfect to work on?
Yeah, I mean, the script was really clear about the action in a way that most scripts aren't, and so that was really interesting and unique. But it wasn't until I met with Craig that I really got a clear concept that, oh, this could be special, because he had such a clear vision. And I had watched Bone Tomahawk, previously, and so I knew his style, and I got a sense of the style, and so I could get a sense of how it was going to transfer to this script, which was much more heavy action than Bone Tomahawk. And so that was the moment, because that same script in the hands of somebody else could have been awful. It could have been a terrible, kind of B movie, almost kind of bad slasher film type thing, and it just wasn't. In his hands it became something special and something more thoughtful, and even as you're breaking limbs, it was careful and thoughtful and specific in a way that a lot of that stuff that's written like that isn't.
What was it like working with Vince Vaughn, because it's not typically the type of film that he's used to, and you think of Vince Vaughn and usually it's the comedy side of things, but he goes into this and it's like he's done action movies his entire life, and he settled into the role obviously perfectly.
Yeah, so I mean, part of it really started with character. Him and Craig together had a really clear vision for who this guy was physically, and so like and it matched Craig's larger tone, of like, he was looking for a guy that even as he was fighting was sort of collected and sort of used his physical imposition, as opposed to, he was never raging out on anybody. It was always sort of focused and kind of collected and all that sort of stuff. So then it was, it was an interesting process. The stunt team did a lot of work with Craig to get the fights to where Craig wanted them to be kind of before Vince came in. And so we kind of had a very clear vision for what they were, so that Vince could come in and we could kind of plug him right into exactly what Craig wanted. So that was helpful, that we had that sort of time to refine that work. And then Vince came in and he picked it up really quickly. His physical memory was actually really quite good from the beginning, which I think was good because there was a lot of fights. And so, I think I've definitely worked with plenty of actors who it just doesn't click for them right away. And I think if we had an actor who just naturally didn't pick it up, it would have been really, really hard, especially because, it was a low budget film. We didn't have a month of pre-production. We had a week with Vince to rehearse the fights before we got into it. So he picked it up sort of really quick, and then from there it was just a matter of kind of refining and getting more specific and making moments that weren't working work. And it was tricky for Vince because he was in every scene, every shot, of the movie. So like, we rehearsed for a week before the shoot, but then like he had his big fight, the big fights at the end weren't until the end of the shoot. So that's 4 weeks later that whatever. And so we're literally we would be trying to grab him for 5 minutes in between shots or whatever, and so he was just pulled in a lot of directions. And so so there were times that I think it was really challenging for him, and you know, in terms of sort of how much information he had to process on any given day as he's learning all these lines and also trying to remember choreography he learned 3 weeks ago and all that sort of stuff. So so it was a challenging process for him, but he, you know, he definitely jumped right into it.
Because I thought with this, you've worked with obviously Vince Vaughn here. I know you worked on The Irishman, Wolf of Wall Street, and all these kind of films. Is it ever, I don't know, intimidating isn't the right word, but to kind of try and move these pieces into place when I assume you've seen these people in films for so long before you've even worked with them? Is there any issue with that, or is it just straight down to business as soon as you come onto the set?
It depends on what you're doing. It depends on, I mean, it depends on the position too. As a performer, you know, more or less, you get to show up and, you know, you just sort of do your job, and that's just the person you're doing your job with that day. And,
Yeah.
you know, and some of them are, you know, some of the big stars are more accessible. Some of them are a little more distant, but it doesn't totally matter, because at the end of the day, if they have to punch us, we get punched. If we punch them, we punch them, you know, and they're you know, it's a physical transaction and a professional transaction,
Yeah.
and that usually, you know, goes really well. From a coordinating side of thing, you have to get more into the details of that process, and you have to deal with or you have to tailor your approach to how that particular actor works. And so you know, most actors are wonderful and want to work, and when they get to stunts, they're usually really excited about it, because it's maybe the most exciting thing they get to do in that week or whatever, you know. So most of them are pretty excited about getting it right and learning from, you know, from whoever's there to teach them and make them, because also most of the time our whole job is to make them look good. You know, we're the coordinator's trying to make them look good. The guy they're beating up is trying to make them look good, you know, and so everybody's there to support them to look awesome or to tell the story that they're trying to tell. And so, you know, so that usually sort of, they're usually pretty excited to see us and pretty, you know, happy to sort of dive in. And I mean, that's obviously not always the case. There are actors that either it's physically intimidating to them, or, you know, or they have safety concerns, or it's just not something they're interested in or want to do, but they have to do it because it's part of the story. And that can be a bit more labor intensive in terms of just, you know, walking step by step to get where you need to go.
With Brawl in Cell Block 99 in particular, the two scenes that come to mind is there's one in the prison yard, and there's one in the prison where there's the guy kind of hitting the tires in the corner, and you have a fight involving more than one person. And I wondered what that's like to coordinate, because not to downplay it, but it almost is like a dance, isn't it, where you've got everyone in rhythm doing the same thing. So what's that like to put together, because you have to do it kind of step by step, because you need everyone doing the exact right thing at the exact right time?
Yeah, so I love group fights. You know, I think it's really fun to sort of solve that puzzle, you know, because one-on-one fights are great, but, you know, it can narrow your possibilities in a sense, you know, because it's one-on-one. And as soon as you add extra bodies, you add different angles and dynamics, and 2-on-1 and 2-on-2, and, you know, all that sort of stuff. And so, you know, so that usually kind of starts with your stunt team and being able to, you know, assuming you have some rehearsal time, you're able to sort of get in a room and just kind of work through it and say, okay, my body's here, your body's there, your body's there. All right, so now you're going to come throw this right to me, and I'm going to block. But then, what's my natural way to get to you, because you're coming, and, you know, and it becomes a lot of group work becomes about flow, you know, about, okay, this naturally flows into this, and this naturally flows into that, and, you know, and even that was in the yard fight, you know, with the barbells and things like that. You know, that was one, again, sort of Craig had very specific actions he wanted, but then it was figuring out, okay, how do we naturally flow from this action to that action, and do the bodies turn this way to reveal this, and how do we get to that? And so it's sort of following. There's flow in one-on-one fight too, but you sort of have to almost flow more in the group fights to sort of find what the next move is and build it in that respect.
Yeah, I was thinking, as kind of films get bigger and the budgets get bigger, I imagine your work is only going to get bigger and have to push kind of the boundaries more and that kind of thing. So are you looking forward to that as films develop as they do and things kind of get heightened?
Well, it's interesting because there's lots of big stuff out there, but it's also actually a sort of an age of the small film as well. You know, there are way more kind of medium to low budget features that are being made now than ever have before, and you know, a huge part of that is digital filmmaking, is the fact that you know, you don't have to shoot on film and process film and all that sort of stuff. So so it really opened up a world of independent filmmaking that just didn't, you know, that barely existed 20 years ago. And so they're just different beasts, you know, and they're different animals. And obviously when you get to do the big stuff, it's really, really fun. You know, I've performed on the big stuff. I haven't, you know, coordinated anything that has so much money you don't know what to do with. So and those shows exist, and I've been on them as a performer, and you look around and you're just amazed at what money can do in terms of just making things bigger and more spectacular. But you know, and that's really, really fun. And you know, someday I hope to, you know, be in a position to play with, you know, real big toys and and all that sort of stuff. But I also enjoy, you know, I got into this because I really enjoy telling stories. And I, you know, like I said, I was a director back in college, and so like I definitely, as a coordinator, approach things from story side of things and from a character side of things and things like that. And you know, to some degree that happens just as much, if not more, on kind of the medium to small stuff, because you're not trying to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, it's not about spectacle. It's about whatever your particular story is, and doing as cool of a work as you can do, or as interesting or dramatic as work you can do with the budget constraints you have. And you know, and so there's virtue to both both worlds, I think.
On IMDb, you're listed as one of the stunt doubles on Limitless, I think it is. And so when you're doing that, are you kind of paired with an actor for the day, and as something there's maybe they're uncomfortable with, you step in and it goes like that, or how does that work?
So it's again, it sort of depends on what you're doing specifically. If it's a fight, you know, sort of a bigger fight, most of the time what you'll do is you'll go rehearse with like the other stunt doubles, the other stunt guys, and the stunt coordinator. You'll rehearse the fight first, and then, you know, kind of show it to the director and maybe a DP or something, you know, but you'll show it to them, and then they'll make changes and edits and all that sort of stuff. And then, you know, you'll fix it, and then you kind of have it prepared. And then either your actor comes into a rehearsal before then, or if it's something on the day that they can just sort of pick up, then on the day you get there and you say, okay, hey, show them the fight, and then we show them the fight. And then, you know, like in the example for Limitless, it was, I don't know if you remember the movie, but you know, there was sort of, it's kind of this funky scene at the end where there's these two goons that are sort of all over the apartment, smashing him and doing all these crazy things. You know, and Bradley came in and he picked it all up and he did most of it. You know, I think we did a pass or two with me for some stuff, but like in general, he, you know, he jumped into it and did it. And so that at that point, I'm sort of there as support to be like, oh, hey, in rehearsal, we did it this way, and that solved that problem. Or, you know, oh, hey, like, or even just as simple as, hey, you need some knee pads? Great, here's some knee pads so you don't bust up your knees, you know, and I'm just, and then you can kind of be there as an insurance policy sometimes, if an actor's really sort of dives in. And then, excuse me, and then other times, you know, they'll have a clear vision for when they're going to use the stunt guy. So they say, okay, this piece is definitely our actor. This pieces are definitely our actor. When we throw them through the window, that's definitely our stunt guy. You know, and it's, you know, it's both of those. It's either sort of general, you're there when you need it, or very specific stunts or specific scenes or specific moments, you know, where you're called upon.
I mean, just finally, I wondered, in your career as whether it's a performer or a coordinator. I don't know if there's anything that you have in mind that you'd like to tick off, whether it's a particular stunt, whether it's a particular type of film or someone to work with or anything like that that you're looking forward to hopefully getting to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'd really love to do a war film. You know, I've always been fascinated by it. You know, I've directed a couple shorts that all sort of involved war because it was just, I think it's a place where violence and action, the world that I exist in, sort of really comes head to head with story, and where they're sort of one and the same. And so I think that would be really exciting to be able to be a part of that in a significant way. Really, anytime I get to do sword fighting is a joy because it's how I started in all this. You know, I mean, I live in New York, so there's not a lot of sword fights that come through the streets of New York, but you know, the ones I've gotten to do are really, really fun. So any, you know, any opportunity I could have to sort of continue that throughout my career would be really, really great.
Yeah. Well, thank you for giving me so much of your time today. I really appreciate it, and hope you have a good rest of the day.
All right, my pleasure. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Bye.